Ambassador Lee Ji-eun felt the weight of the entire planet Earth pressing down on the shoulders of her simple gray suit. The fabric was smooth, human-made, and felt terribly plain in the Hall of Concord. Around her, the air shimmered with the forms of the Galactic Council members. There was the Arcturian High Legate, a creature that looked like a weeping willow made of living metal. The Velm, insectoid and clicking softly. The Grax, large and furry with too many eyes. They were all so different, yet they shared one thing today. They were all ignoring her. For 50 years, humanity had been part of the galactic community. For 50 years, they had followed every rule, paid every trade levy, and provided resources from their solar system. They had shared their art, their music, their history. And for 50 years, they had been told to wait, to be patient, to prove themselves. Today was the day the Council voted on granting Earth a seat at the long, circular table made of starlight and strange matter. A voice. A vote. Ji-eun's aide, Kim Min-soo, stood a step behind her. He was a quiet man, formerly an engineer who designed deep space communication relays. He held a datapad, his face calm, but his eyes missed nothing. He saw the slight tilt of the Grax ambassador's head, a sign of boredom. He saw the Velm delegates exchanging rapid clicks, a private conversation. The broadcast was live. Every news channel on Earth was showing this moment. Billions of people were watching, hoping the Arcturian High Legate shifted, its metal fronds making a sound like wind chimes. It was the Council's turn to speak. The Legate's voice was translated by a small device on Ji-eun's collar. It was a calm, genderless, and utterly cold voice. The petition of the human species of Sol 3, called Earth for a seat on the Galactic Council, has been considered, the Legate began. Ji-eun's heart, which had been a tight drum in her chest, gave a painful thump of hope. Min-soo's fingers tightened on the datapad. The Council acknowledges humanity's rapid technological progress and their energetic contributions to the galactic economy, the Legate continued. The words were right, but the tone was wrong. It was the tone of a teacher praising a small child for a messy drawing. However, after thorough review, the consensus is clear. Humanity remains a young species. Your historical record is dominated by internal conflict. Your political structures are fragmented and unpredictable. Your psychological profile shows a high degree of emotional volatility. These factors introduce an unacceptable level of risk to the stable governance of known space. Each sentence was a hammer blow. Ji-eun's diplomatic smile felt like it was cracking her face. She wanted to shout. She wanted to list every war they had ended, every global treaty they had signed since first contact. She wanted to point to the Velm, whose hive wars had wiped out 3 planets, or the Grax, who had a blood feud going back 10,000 years. But she said nothing. Protocol demanded silence. Therefore, the Legate said, the finality in its voice as hard as steel, the request for a seat is denied. Your current status as a protectorate species with associate membership will continue. You are encouraged to focus on internal development and resource fulfillment. The Council thanks you for your submission. The silence in the hall was absolute. None of the other ambassadors objected. None even looked at her. The decision had been made long before this meeting, and they were all part of it. Earth was not just being denied a chair. It was being told it was not fit to sit with the adults. Min-soo gently touched her elbow. The broadcast was still live. She had to say something. She had to be graceful in defeat. For Earth, Ji-eun took a shallow breath and activated her own microphone. Her voice, when it came, was clear and steady, a miracle she didn't feel. The human delegation acknowledges the Council's decision, she said, each word tasting like ash. We will, of course, continue to cooperate fully for the peace and prosperity of the galaxy. The empty, Polite words hung in the air. She gave a small, formal bow. The Arcturian legate gave a slight ripple of its fronds, a dismissive gesture. The audience was over. The walk out of the hall was the longest of Li Ji-un's life. The eyes of the alien delegates were physical weights on her back. The journey back to the human diplomatic quarters on the station was a blur. Only when the door hissed shut behind them, sealing them in the quiet, Earth-standard atmosphere of their own rooms, did she let go. She didn't cry. She just stood in the middle of the room, her whole body trembling with a furious, cold energy. Min-Su placed the datapad on a table. The broadcast has ended. The networks on Earth are reacting. She could imagine the outrage, the despair, the humiliation. 50 years of being good citizens, and this was their reward. A permanent place at the kids' table. On Earth, in a nondescript building buried under layers of security and soul, a different kind of silence reigned. Director Park Tae-shik watched the final moments of the broadcast on a large screen. The room was dark, lit only by the glow of data streams on other monitors. He was an older man, with a face that seemed carved from old stone. He had been the head of the Pan-Human Intelligence Coordination Agency since before first contact. He had never believed the Council would give them a seat. A soft chime came from his console. A message, encrypted beyond any galactic standard, flashed. It was a single word. Nova. Park Tae-shik allowed himself a small, thin smile. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a chess player whose opponent has finally taken the bait. He tapped a key, opening a secure line to a man named Kim Min-Su, who was currently light years away on a space station. Phase 1 is complete, Park said, his voice a dry rustle. They have made it emotional. A public slap. Good. Now we make it logical. On the screen, he pulled up a different file. It was labeled Project Tabletop. It was not a plan for a weapon. It was a blueprint. A blueprint for a key. And as Li Ji-un stared at the wall of her quarters, feeling the bitter sting of failure, the first quiet moves of a much different game began. A game humanity had been preparing for in the shadows, hoping they would never have to play. The table had been shaken. Now, it was time to see who really held the legs. The silence in the human diplomatic quarters was thick and heavy. Li Ji-un stared at the blank wall, her mind replaying the Arcturian legate's words on a cruel loop. Emotional volatility. The insult was so precise, so calculated. It was designed to provoke the very reaction it described. Behind her, Kim Min-su was busy. His calm demeanor had not cracked, but his movements were now focused, efficient. He opened a secure panel in the wall, revealing a communications terminal that was not part of the station's standard issue. He entered a long string of codes. A small light glowed green. "Ambassador," he said softly, his voice pulling her back. "Director Park is waiting." Ji-un took a deep, steadying breath, pushing the personal humiliation aside. She was still the ambassador. She walked to the terminal. The screen lit up, showing the weathered face of Park Tae-shik back on Earth. His expression was unreadable. "Ji-un." "Min-su," Park greeted them, his voice calm. "The reaction on Earth is as expected. Public outrage. Political panic. Calls for us to withdraw from galactic treaties. Good. It is a believable performance." "You expected this, Director," Ji-un stated. It wasn't a question. For the last decade, our probability models gave the Council's approval less than a 12% chance, Park replied. Their governance is built on stability, which to them means the status quo. New voices, especially one as loud as ours, are a threat. Their denial is a certainty. A painful, necessary certainty. Necessary for what? Ji-un asked, though a part of her was starting to understand. The public slap was part of a plan. For Phase 2, for Project Tabletop, Park said. Now, the galaxy sees us as wounded, emotional, and predictable. They will expect us to sulk, to protest weakly, or to beg for reconsideration. They will not look deeper, not where we need them to look. He shifted on the screen, pulling up a data window. Min-Su, your relay from the Dagu facility is ready. It is time for you both to see our leverage. The screen split. On one side was Park. On the other appeared a young woman in a simple lab coat, standing in a sterile white room. She had intelligent, tired eyes, and her black hair was tied back. This was Dr. Kang Su-bin, Director. Ambassador, Su-bin said, bowing her head slightly. Her voice was soft but clear. I will explain in simple terms. She held up a small, dull gray crystal. This is a discarded fragment of a standard hyperlane core. It is the technology that allows faster-than-light travel. Every major species uses a version of it. It is the foundation of their civilization, their trade, their power. They believe it is perfect. She placed the crystal in a delicate-looking machine. A schematic appeared next to her, showing the complex quantum lattice of the crystal. For 5 years, since I was a graduate student, I have been studying these. Not to build them, but to understand their nature. I found something everyone else missed. The schematic zoomed in to a tiny swirling point in the lattice. At the quantum level, there is a resonance flaw. A tiny, natural imperfection in the way the energy field stabilizes. It is like a single note that is slightly off-key in a grand song. To the galaxy, the song sounds fine. But if you can find that exact off-key note and sing it back at the crystal with enough precision. She tapped a control. A low hum filled the audio feed. On the schematic, the swirling point began to pulse erratically. The dull gray crystal in the machine flickered with internal light. For a second, it glowed brightly. Then it went dark and crumbled into a fine inner powder. The resonance collapses, Su-bin said, looking directly into the camera. It does not explode. It just fails, turns to sand. This flaw exists in every hyperlane core, in every ship, in every power station, because they all use the same basic physics. A physics the galaxy thinks it has mastered. Li Jiuyun felt a cold thrill run through her. This was not a weapon of mass destruction. It was something far more subtle and terrifying. You can turn off their ships, she whispered. Not turn off, Su-bin corrected. Not from across the galaxy. That would require impossible power. But I can make the core stutter. For a nanosecond. If a ship is in hyperspace, a nanosecond stutter at the wrong moment could push it off its course. Just by a few kilometers. But in hyperspace, a few kilometers at the wrong moment means, well, it means the ship never comes out. Or it comes out inside a star. Or it simply vanishes. Min-Su, the engineer, spoke up. It is a universal lockpick, and we have the only key. Exactly. Park Tae-shik's voice came back, full of grim satisfaction. They denied us a seat, claiming we are unstable. We will show them that their entire civilization is built on a foundation that is, in fact, unstable. And only we understand it. So what is the plan? Jion asked, her mind now fully engaged, the despair replaced by a sharp, calculating focus. A demonstration, Park said. The Galactic Fleet Review at Sirius is in 7 weeks. A show of their united, invincible power. We will show them it is illusion. We will make every single one of their ships flicker, just for a moment, in front of the entire galaxy. We will show we can do it, and then we will stop. We will not destroy. We will not kill. We will just touch the flaw. And then we offer them the fix, Min-Su said, understanding dawning. Yes, Park said. We offer to share the knowledge of the flaw and the patch to repair it. We offer to make their foundation truly solid. But we do so from a position of strength, not begging. We do not ask for a seat then. We demand a place at the head of the new table we reveal. The table they did not know was broken. Ji-un looked from the determined face of Director Park to the brilliant, quiet face of Dr. Kang Soo-bin. The young scientist held the fate of galaxies in her equations, and she looked like she needed a strong cup of coffee. The irony was almost beautiful. "Dr. Kang," Ji-un asked, "can it be done? The demonstration at Sirius?" Soo-bin nodded. "The math is solid. The resonator device is small. It can be built into a modified deep space probe. Kim Min-soo has the schematics for the delivery system. The probe will be on the edge of the system, disguised as space junk. It will fire the resonance pulse. It will work." There was a long silence. The path was clear. It was a dangerous, arrogant, breathtaking path. It was also the only one left. "Then we begin," said Lee Ji-un, the ambassador. The anger was still there, but it was now a cold, hard tool. "We prepare for the demonstration. We let Earth rage and mourn. And in 7 weeks, we will show the Galactic Council that humanity does not get angry. We get even. And then we get to work." In her lab under the mountain, Kang Soo-bin allowed herself a small, weary smile. She had discovered the flaw, not as an act of war, but of pure science. Now, it would become the key to a door everyone said was locked forever. She turned back to her screens, the numbers and graphs glowing in the dim light. The real work started now. The 7 weeks passed with a strange, tense rhythm. On Earth, the public anger over the Council's denial slowly cooled into a sullen, resentful silence. News cycles moved on. Politicians made speeches about building a stronger, independent human future. It was all noise, and Director Park Tae-shik made sure it stayed that way. It was the perfect cover for the quiet, focused work happening in the shadows. In her lab, under the Daegu Mountains, Dr. Kang Soo-bin barely slept. She was no longer working with crystal fragments. Now, she and a small team of the world's best engineers were building the resonator. It was a deceptively simple device, about the size of a large suitcase. Its heart was a complex quantum generator, designed to mimic and amplify the specific flawed frequency of the hyperlane cores. It hummed with the sound you felt in your teeth, not your ears. Kim Min-soo, still on the galactic station with Ambassador Ji-un, worked remotely. Using his engineering skills, he designed the delivery system. The plan was to use an old, human-made deep space probe called Pioneer 12. It had been drifting near the star Sirius for decades, officially dead, forgotten by everyone. Min-soo wrote new software. He plotted a tiny, almost invisible course correction. Pioneer 12 would not move to a new location. It would simply turn a little like a sleeping person shifting in bed. Its main dish would align perfectly with the location of the Galactic Fleet Review. Captain Choi Hanna arrived at the Daegu facility in the 6th week. She was a military liaison, chosen by Park for her nerves of steel and her utter lack of theatrics. She walked into the lab, took one look at the humming resonator, and nodded. "Will it work?" Soo-bin, who had been staring at a screen of cascading numbers, blinked up at her. "The math says yes." "Good enough for me," Hanna said. Her job was to oversee the integration of the device into the probe and to be the military voice in the final stages. She asked sharp, practical questions about power levels, signal duration, and fail-safes. There were many fail-safes. The device was designed to fire its pulse once, and then completely erase its own core programming, leaving behind only inert machinery. No evidence. The day of the fleet review arrived. Across known space, billions of beings tuned into the broadcast. It was a symbol of peace through overwhelming strength. The great ships of the Arcturian Unity, the Veln High Fleet, the Grax Ironclads, and others glided in a complex, beautiful ballet around the star Sirius. Their energy shields glimmered like soap bubbles. Their weapons ports, ceremonially open, gleamed in the starlight. The Arcturian flagship, the pride of the Corps, was at the center. It was a 5-kilometer-long masterpiece of silver metal and gentle curves. A symbol of ancient, unquestioned power. In a secure bunker now. Linked to Daeju and to Min-Soo on the station, Director Park watched the live feed. Lee Ji-yoon and Kim Min-soo watched from their quarters, their screen showing the same glorious display. The air in all 3 locations was so still it felt brittle. "We are aligned." Min-soo's voice came through the com, quiet and steady. "Pioneer 12 is in position. Systems are green. Power at 100%, Subin reported from Daegu, her voice thin with tension. Resonance sequence is loaded. Captain Hana stood beside her, a solid, unmoving presence. "On your mark, Director." Park Tae-shik watched the screen. The pride of the Corps was beginning its signature maneuver, a powerful energy surge from its main drives that would paint the void with light for the finale. It was the moment when every ship's hyperlane core, even those just for auxiliary power, would be cycling at its peak frequency. The moment of greatest vulnerability. "Mark," Park said, the word soft and final in the silent dark near Sirius. The old Pioneer 12 probe awoke for 1 second. A small antenna focused. From a device built by humans in a mountain on a denied world, a pulse was emitted. It was not an energy weapon. It carried no destructive force. It was a song. A single, precise, wrong note. The pulse washed over the fleet at the speed of light. The effect was instantaneous, and uniform. Every single alien ship in the review flinched. The shimmering energy shields around the great vessels flickered, fractured into static, and vanished. All of them. For 1/2 second, the magnificent, invincible armada was naked, their hulls plain and exposed to the void. External lights on 1,000 ships dimmed and died. On the broadcast feed, the graceful ballet became a shuddering, confused stutter. The pride of the Corps was the most dramatic. As it was mid-surge, the collapse of its core resonance caused a feedback loop in its drive systems. The beautiful wave of light from its engines choked off into nothing. The great ship lurched violently, its nose dipping down as if struck. It fell out of formation, tumbling slowly and helplessly for a few kilometers before emergency systems. With a painful whine audible over the combs, kicked in and stabilized it, the broadcast audio erupted into chaos. Panicked shouts in Arcturian, frantic clicks from the Veln, roars from the Grax. Core failure. Primary systems offline. Shields are down. Shields are down. What was that? For 10 full seconds, the greatest military power in the galaxy was blind, vulnerable, and terrified. Then, systems rebooted. Shields flickered back to life. Lights came on, but the perfect formation was broken. The pride of the Corps sat adrift like a wounded animal. The illusion was shattered. In the human bunker, there was no cheering. Only a profound, heavy silence. Signal has been sent. Resonator has self-scrambled. Pioneer 12 is dormant again, Subin reported, her hands shaking now that the work was done. On the station, Min-soo watched the panic on the official galactic news channels. Confirmation. The demonstration is complete. Total success. Captain Hana let out a slow breath. They felt it. Director Park finally moved, leaning back in his chair. He looked older, the weight of the moment etched on his face. They had not fired a shot. They had not taken a life, but they had declared a new kind of war. A war of knowledge. Li Ji-eun watched the screen, her heart pounding. She saw the Arcturian flagship, so proud and dismissive weeks before, now looking small and confused. The humiliation her people had felt was now reflected back 1,000-fold on the faces of the entire council. But this was not about revenge, she reminded herself. It was about leverage. The next phase would be harder. The panic would turn to suspicion, then to investigation. They would find nothing. No weapon signatures, no radiation, no traces. Just a mystery. A terrifying, universal mystery. And then humanity would knock on the door again. This time, not to ask for a seat, but to explain why the floor beneath the table was cracking, and to offer the only tool that could fix it. The quiet in the room was the quiet before the storm. The table had been shaken. Now, everyone was waiting to see what would fall. Chaos held the galactic capital station in a tight grip for 3 days. The fleet review at Sirius was supposed to be a display of unity and strength. Instead, it had become an event known as the Great Stutter. Every major power was screaming for answers. The Arcturians accused the Velen of sabotage. The Velen hissed that the Grax were testing a new weapon. The Grax bellowed that someone had broken ancient treaties. Investigations swarmed the Sirius system, but they found nothing. No debris, no energy residue, no signs of an attack. It was as if the universe itself had winked. Director Park Tae-shik watched the reports flood in from his bunker. He gave the order to wait. Let the fear simmer. Let the confusion turn to desperation. On the 4th day, a formal request for an urgent dialogue arrived from the human delegation. It was not ignored. This time, the council summoned them immediately. The Hall of Concord felt different. The usual air of serene superiority was gone, replaced by a tense, watchful anxiety. The delegates did not sit in calm silence. They whispered, their fronds rattled, their claws tapped. All eyes were on the main entrance. The doors opened. But it was not Ambassador Li Ji-eun who walked in alone. It was Captain Choi Hana. She wore the simple, dark blue uniform of the Human Defense Fleet. No medals, no decorations. Her black hair was tied back severely. Her face was a mask of calm. She carried no weapon, only a small data chip in her hand. Her boots echoed in the sudden silence as she walked to the center of the great chamber. Stopping where Ji-eun had stood to be denied, she did not wait for permission to speak. She activated the universal translator on her collar, her voice flat and clear. "You are looking for the cause of the failure at Sirius," she began. There was no greeting, no title for the council. "Your investigations will find nothing because you are looking for something that isn't there. You are looking for a bomb." There was no bomb. A low murmur rippled through the hall. The Arcturian High Legate leaned forward, its metal fronds rigid. "Explain, human." Hannah held up the data chip. The cause was a flaw in the quantum resonance matrix of the hyperlane core. Every core, in every ship that was present, in every power station on every one of your worlds. It is a universal design flaw in the technology that is the foundation of your civilization. The murmur became a rumble of disbelief and anger. "Impossible," clicked a Velen ambassador. "Our technology is perfect. Millennia of refinement." Hannah did not raise her voice. "Your technology is stable. It is not perfect. You simply never found the crack in the foundation." She slotted the chip into a public terminal. A schematic, the same one Kang Soo-bin had created, appeared in holographic form above her. It showed the complex lattice of a core, zooming in to the tiny swirling flaw. This anomaly exists at a quantum level. Under normal conditions, it is harmless. But if exposed to a very specific manipulated resonance frequency, it becomes unstable. It causes a cascading failure in the core's integrity. For a nanosecond, she pointed at the schematic. At Sirius, you were exposed to that frequency. A targeted, precise pulse. It caused your shields to collapse. It caused your primary systems to hiccup. It caused the pride of the core to lose control. The pulse was not powerful. It was just exact, like the right key in a lock. The Grax ambassador stood, its fur bristling. You admit to an act of war. We admit to an act of demonstration, Hana corrected, turning to face the massive creature. We did not destroy. We did not kill. We showed you a truth you refused to see. You denied humanity a seat because you said we were flawed and unstable. We are here to show you that your bedrock is fragile, and we have the only blueprint to its weakness. The silence that followed was deafening. The truth was more terrifying than any weapon. A weapon can be countered, disarmed. A universal flaw in your most essential technology is a ghost in every machine, a shadow in every power line. Why? The question came from the Arcturian legate, its voice quieter now, stripped of its condescension. Why reveal this? Because we are not your enemies, Hana said, and for the first time, a hint of human passion entered her voice. We tried to join you. You pushed us away. You left us no other way to make you listen. So we did not build a bigger gun. We learned to read the fine print on the walls of your house. And now we are telling you the walls have termites. She deactivated the hologram. You have two choices. First, you can continue to treat us as a threat. You can try to take this knowledge from us by force. But the secret does not exist in one place, on one ship. It is distributed. And if humanity is threatened with extinction, that knowledge will be released. To every rogue faction, to every pirate band, to every rival in this room. Imagine a galaxy where everyone has the key to turn off everyone else's lights. Forever. She let that horrific image hang in the air. She saw the delegates look at each other, realizing the nightmare. The second choice, Hana continued, her voice softening slightly. You work with us, not as masters and servants, not as counsel and petitioner, as partners. Humanity will lead a joint initiative. We will share the complete analysis of the quantum resonance flaw. Together, with your engineers and our scientists, we will develop the patch, a permanent, stable solution to make the hyperlane cores truly invulnerable. We will fix the foundation for everyone. She finally looked at Li Ji-um, who was watching from the human observer's gallery. You denied us a seat at this table because you saw us as children bringing a knife to a peace conference. We are not bringing a knife. We are bringing the architect's plans. And we have found a crack in the ceiling that you all missed. She stepped back. The choice is yours. You can have a broken table that everyone fears is about to collapse. Or you can have a firm, steady one. But if you want it steady, we will be the ones holding the blueprints. We will be the ones directing the repairs. Captain Choi Hana stood perfectly still, waiting. She had not asked for a seat. She had simply explained the new reality. The table was not theirs to grant anymore. Humanity was already beneath it, holding up the leg they had just proved was rotten. Now, the galaxy had to decide if they wanted to keep sitting on it. The silence in the Hall of Concord stretched for a full minute after Captain Choi Hana finished speaking. It was a deep, heavy quiet, filled with the hum of machinery and the unspoken dread of 100 species. The Arcturian High Legate's fronds, usually flowing with calm grace, were motionless. The Grax ambassador had slowly sat back down, its many eyes fixed on the small human woman in the center of the room. Finally, the legate stirred. Its translated voice, when it came, had lost all its former coldness. It was now simply tired and wary. The council must confer, privately. Hana gave a single sharp nod. Of course. She turned and walked out, her footsteps echoing just as firmly as when she entered. The doors sealed shut behind her, leaving the galaxy's most powerful beings alone with the impossible choice she had given them. The private conference lasted for 10 hours. Lee Ji-yoon and Kim Min-soo waited in their quarters. They did not speak much. There was nothing left to say. The move had been made. Director Park, from Earth, simply monitored the chaotic streams of encrypted diplomatic traffic flooding the networks. The galaxy was in a state of shock, and beneath the shock, a terrible calculation was being made. Could they take the knowledge by force, risking its release to the universe? Could they ignore it, living forever with a sword hanging over every ship and city? Or did they swallow their pride and accept the hand of the species they had just humiliated? When the summons came back to the hall, it was for Ambassador Ji-yoon. She entered, back straight, face composed. The legate looked at her. The Council has reached a decision, it said. We will establish a new galactic body, the Galactic Stability Directorate. Its sole purpose will be to analyze the flaw you describe and to engineer, test, and implement a universal patch. Ji-yoon waited. This was the crucial part. The Directorate, the legate continued, each word seeming to cost it something, will be led by a human appointee. It will have authority over all relevant research and engineering across member species. In return, humanity will immediately and fully share all data on the quantum resonance flaw. All research will be transparent. The patch, once developed, will be freely distributed to all. It was everything Park Tae-shik had hoped for. More even, they had not been given a seat on the old council. They had been made the head of a new, vital council of their own. The human delegation accepts, Ji-yoon said, her voice firm. We will appoint our lead scientist, Dr. Kang Soo-bin, as the first director of stability. We will begin data transfer within the hour. And so the new work began. It was not a victory celebration. It was a grim, urgent, and collaborative effort to fix a broken universe in a new orbital laboratory. Built with frantic speed, Dr. Kang Soo-bin found herself in a room with the greatest minds of a dozen species. An Arcturian crystalline physicist floated beside a Veln hive engineer. A Grax materials expert hunched over a terminal, growling at the numbers. Soo-bin, at the head of the table, felt impossibly small and very young. She took a deep breath and began to explain her equations. Starting from the very beginning. At first, there was suspicion. But as she walked them through the elegant, undeniable math, the suspicion turned to grudging respect, then to intense fascination. The Arcturian physicist, whose name translated to something like clear thinker, was the first to admit it. The resonance pattern. It is so obvious once you see it. How did we miss this for so long? You weren't looking for a flaw, Soo-bin said simply. You believed your work was finished. We looked at it with new eyes. Kim Min-soo coordinated the logistics from the station. He became a master of diplomacy and supply chains, making sure the right materials and engineers were where they needed to be. It was a task of monumental complexity, and he did it with quiet, flawless efficiency. On Earth, Director Park Tae-shik finally left his bunker. He stood on a balcony overlooking Seoul, the city lights glittering like a terrestrial galaxy. The weight was still there, but it had changed. It was no longer the weight of a secret. It was the weight of responsibility. They had forced their way to the head of the table. Now they had to prove they deserved to be there. Captain Choi Hana was assigned as the Directorate Security Liaison. Her job was not to guard against the aliens, but to protect the project from any faction, human or otherwise, that might try to sabotage or weaponize the work. She patrolled the new labs, a silent, watchful figure. Months passed. The Soo-bin patch moved from theory to simulation to a prototype. It was not a physical object, but a software and hardware modification, a way to recalibrate the core's resonance to bypass the flaw permanently. The day of the first live test arrived. A retired Arcturian freighter, volunteered for the experiment, sat in a deserted star system. On its bridge, a mixed crew of humans and Arcturians watched the screens. In the lab, Subin, Clearthinker, and the others held their breath. They fired the old, modified Pioneer pulse at the ship. The monitor showing the freighter's core resonance raced for the stutter dot. It didn't come. The line on the screen remained steady, a perfect, unwavering hum. The freighter's systems did not flicker. Its shields held strong. A soft chime from the Grax expert signaled success. In the lab, there was no cheering. The Arcturian Clearthinker extended a delicate, crystalline limb and touched Subin's shoulder in a gesture of profound respect. "The foundation is steady," it said dot at a formal ceremony to mark the patch's approval for galaxy-wide rollout. The Arcturian legate addressed the assembly. It turned to Li Ji-yoon. "Your method was audacious. It was a dangerous gamble." Ji-yoon, now the permanent human liaison to the Directorate, offered a genuine smile. It was a smile of tired satisfaction. "You mistook our patience for weakness. You mistook our cooperation for surrender. We only ever wanted to help build a better galaxy. You left us no tool but the truth. So we picked it up." She looked around the hall, now filled with the scientists and engineers of many worlds working together. The fear was gone, replaced by a focused purpose. "The table is steadier now," she said. "And finally, everyone has a place to sit." Back in her lab, Dr. Kang Subin looked at the data streams from 1,000 worlds beginning the patch installation. Her discovery had started as a curious puzzle in a mountain. It had become a key that unlocked not a door, but a shared future. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the steady hum of the fixed core on her display. It was a good sound. It was the sound of a floor that would no longer crack, and a table that would finally hold the weight of them all.